Earlier today, Bethesda shared quite a few new details on some of the up-and-coming content on its way to Fallout 4 and Skyrim. In this video, I'm going to be taking a look at the Fallout 4 side because, well, there was a lot shared here, a lot of cool images, a lot of very interesting details around this, and for those of you not familiar, this is going to be part of an up-and-coming Creation Club release, one that looks like it's actually going to be the largest Creation Club release we've really seen thus far. Naturally, I know many of you aren't actually a huge fan of Creation Club, but if nothing else, I would give some of this content a look. Even if you have no interest in actually purchasing these things, what Bethesda is doing this time around is quite a bit different than what they've done in the past. We already saw in some of the previous teases of this one, we'll be making a return to Fallout 3's capital Wasteland. And although a lot of times the pricing isn't my favorite on Creation Club, the actual content we're getting this time around is probably some of the most interesting out of all of the updates we've gotten from this thus far. So one that I'm actually finally happy to have an answer to is virtual workshops. I'll explain more on that in a moment. We really haven't heard too much about this up until this point in this tease. In the article, it's described how you'll be able to travel to new worlds from the comfort of your settlement with VR workshops. These new VR workshops are going to feature limitless resources, huge building limits, placeable enemy spawners for your own custom encounters, and a selection of weather, music, and visual filters to choose from. In one of the screenshots, we could see one of the black and white filters being applied. And the way you're going to use this or get to these new locations is by creating a VR pod at one of your existing workshops and actually attach it to power. And as far as where this is going to take us, we could see 4 of the new locations: a grid world, an atomic crater, a desert island, and the capital Wasteland's GNR Plaza. And you can see some building or activity at all 4 of those. But even further, as you can see in some of the screenshots, the bundle's also going to include 40 new workshop items applied to Fallout 4 in general, most of which will be able to be crafted at your real world workshops. So perhaps some of the items from this are too large for the regular workshops and can only be used in the virtual ones. So this seems really interesting. Obviously, price will be very interesting on this because it seems like it's going to be a fairly massive, almost DLC-sized add-on. Like with this one in particular, assuming this can be bought as one singular bundle, you are going to be approaching some of those workshop DLCs we had with the regular Fallout 4 DLC system, even independent of Creation Club. One of the other interesting parts of this, you could actually see a terminal that seemingly will be used with it. Start attack mode is probably in reference to those NPC spawners that were mentioned earlier, but being able to generate your own VR settlers here also seems like it'll be super handy. Being able to quickly populate one of these VR settlements is definitely a nice feature, especially if you want to create some cool battles at this or just want to mess around with something among settlers. You can change the weather type, which will be really handy, especially for console users that can't do that just easily with console commands. The render mode functionality in particular, I'm pretty curious about. Obviously, there's a lot of lighting / visual mods for Fallout 4 for both PC and Xbox One. Not really for PS4, but what mods are there really for PS4? It'll be interesting to see how big of an impact this will have and if it could be used as a tangible alternative. Obviously, there's going to be a black and white mode, which could be good for certain screenshots, but how far beyond that does it get? I assume they'll probably just be preset filters similar to what you see on like Instagram. But then of course, also the fact that you are getting the GNR Plaza not only as some kind of new quest, which we'll talk about in a moment, but also as a new workshop does seem pretty cool. It seems like they created that world space and they're trying to get the most out of it. So the reason I was so excited to talk about this one at the start is because we had VR in the Fallout 4.ccc file for a really long time now. At the end of my last CC video, I was speculating, what could VR mean? Are we getting VR focused DLC? But no, in reality, those were all corresponding to these VR workshops. And based off the people building this or behind this one in particular, I am pretty excited to get my hands on it. Although of course, there still will be questions as far as things like how will this affect the base game? Can you just spawn down a bunch of settlers, farm a bunch of resources quickly here, and then bring that all back over? Can you do things like set up supply lines? I have to assume not, but I will be curious as far as carrying over items, how that will work or not work. Also, of course, you can't totally tell from the images, but I will be curious to see how large some of these world spaces are. How much buildable room do you have? Because if you really do have limitless resources and huge building limits, you could create something pretty massive here. I'm actually pretty excited for this one, not only for myself, but this seems like one of those tools or add-ons to this game that the community could really take advantage of and create some pretty cool stuff. Although either way, outside of that, for those of us that aren't talented in that area, we do have some other content that you can just play in a more typical fashion. The first of which is the capital Wasteland Mercenaries, and this is the big one to pay attention to, as it does seemingly mark Bethesda's first return to Fallout 3's capital Wasteland since they actually created that game. It's not a full-on remaster, but it is an official Bethesda source bringing us back to that location. One of the key aspects of this one is it's going to be adding in 8 new outfits, many of which you could actually see pictured in the background here. These are kind of from Fallout 3. They're actually inspired by Fallout 3, and some of them were based off the concept art for that game, so it's not a one-to-one direct recreation of that content, but rather going to be very similar and very familiar with its own little bit of flavor. Basically, you're going to have to help a group of ragtag mercenaries defend the GNR, which we could see imaged in some of these other pictures or even some of the older ones. And you'll be fending off an antagonistic military company, which, based on the description, kind of matches the Gunners, although the potential is there that this could be one of the Fallout 3 factions. An interesting component of this is actually not going to be the GNR Plaza workshop. It seems like those would be two separate things. This quest will take you back to the GNR Plaza. You could do this whole experience there, get the new outfits, defend the GNR itself, and seemingly the GNR workshop will be a totally separate purchase. And overall, I'm very fascinated by this one in particular, again, just really due to that Fallout 3 factor. I have to imagine Bethesda will be looking at the performance of this one closely, especially if it really is a breakout among Creation Club content. I could see other things like this bringing us back for a small glimpse or just a small experience at a familiar or nostalgic location. That was something we saw a lot of in Operation Anchorage, and getting to revisit that with a small quest or mini story could be kind of cool, even just outside of the GNR Plaza. Of course, since this was originally teased, we actually have seen several mods adding in these outfits also, so it should be pretty interesting to compare this to some of those free alternatives that have popped up. Although in a similar vein, we also do have the Gunners versus Minutemen. What this is going to be is a new battle in Fallout 4. You're going to be helping the Minutemen to retake Quincy, and now described as a result of that, you'll be able to unlock 6 new power armor paints and a rare automatic laser musket if you are successful in that endeavor. We've heard in the past, and it's described again here, that you don't actually have to join the Minutemen to do this one, but if you did join the Minutemen, if you did retake the castle and unlock its armory, they will have better equipment, and otherwise it's kind of just described as a big fight at Quincy. You'll be on the side of the Minutemen and have some NPCs with you, and you'll be trying to clear out and take down all of the Gunners at that location. And I'm actually pretty excited to see what scale this one actually is. I used to do battle videos for Fallout 4, and large-scale battles aren't super successful always in this, so I'll be interested to see how a scripted take on that will actually function and work in Fallout 4. Although I gotta say, the power armor paint jobs coming with this are pretty cool. As I mentioned before, there are 6 in total, 3 for the Gunners and 3 for the Minutemen. I would say the pricing on these in particular will be a major determining factor because it's not super unique, but the skins at the very least actually do look pretty cool. I definitely like what I'm seeing in that department. So to me, those are really the 3 standout or unique things coming with this batch of Creation Club releases. I think those 3 things really mark a departure from the typical. They aren't just a weapon or an armor with a quest to go along with it. It seems a little bit more involved and a little bit larger, which I really like to see. That's the type of content I've been asking for, as have many others, for a long time now. Although, outside of that, we also do have more in the way of the typical just weapons and armors. First up, we get the Cr7 T4l Combat Rifle. This is pretty cool. It basically is a more futuristic variant of the combat rifle you could find in Fallout 4 to begin with. But even this one, although kind of at first glance just looking like a typical weapon, has a little bit more to kind of sweeten the pot or make it a bit more attractive. Firstly, as you can see in the image, it's actually coming with a variety of different skins and customization options to go along with it, and it's mentioned how it'll feature several different faction skins, but also that it'll include a holotape as well as a virtual companion to give you a little bit of a backstory on the rifle's make and some of its history. So we'll see with this one and how exactly it is implemented, but I do like how that sounds. With Creation Club weapons, it's so hard because there are just so many free weapon mods out there that it kind of just has a lot of competition, but in general, if you compare this to some of the earlier Creation Club releases as far as weapons go, it looks like it's going to have a lot more in the way of features, which is something I'm very happy to see. We also do see the return of the Tesla cannon, this originally appearing in Fallout 3's Broken Steel DLC. This one does actually seem a bit more typical. It's going to have a small quest where you track down a gunner crew to retrieve it, 2 attack styles, likely one just being the typical blue beam and then a separate one being a kind of connecting beam, that with the orange, but then also just general custom modifications. This definitely looks pretty cool. cool. Just the visuals and the design of the weapon overall is cool to see in Fallout 4, but for me at least, it's really going to be around how much this costs as to how cool it actually is. But then finally, the last tease on this list is one we've actually known about for a while, the longest out of everything on this list, that with customizable vault suits. This was meant to come out originally way back several months ago with the last batch of Creation Club releases, but it ran into an issue. In effect, what it's going to be is either a vault suit in the Fallout 4 style or the classic Fallout 3 style that you could make either black, white, purple, red, orange, yellow, green, or the original blue, and change the number on the back of. So you could pick any number ranging from 1 to 120. I feel like this one's kind of niche. It's not really offered on the modding side of things. No mod really adds in quite this, although there are several vault suit retexture or redesign mods out there. Some definitely going in an extreme direction, but at the same time, I don't really think I would use something like this. It doesn't seem super value to me. I don't really care what vault number's on the back. I don't even really see it that often. And I have to imagine for a lot of you, unless you're really into like role playing or something, that the existing vault suits are probably good enough. But either way, that is a look at all of the new things on their way with Creation Club. As I mentioned earlier in this video, I think this batch of releases is really interesting. Some of the stuff in this is getting very close to DLC size, the type of content that I have no problem paying for. This being a stark contrast from the release when we got like the Prey suit that was like, all right, it's literally just an outfit. I could go download 1,000 different outfit mods instead. But the VR Workshop in particular is pretty unique. We don't really have a mod doing exactly that, and it is very close to a DLC that we would have seen for Fallout 4 anyway. In fact, I could have really seen that just being a DLC, maybe with just a little bit more content. Outside of that, not directly relevant, but something that is good news if you follow Fallout 4 and Fallout 4 modding. With this, the ESL file type actually also got an update. ESL files are pretty unique with Fallout 4. It's what's used in Creation Club as opposed to the typical ESM or ESP files. And with this most recent batch and update, they actually now can contain more forms. That meaning that you could actually have larger creations in a given ESL file. And in turn, certain mods that are on the larger side can now take advantage of that file type. The advantage being it doesn't occupy one of the 250 spots in your load order. You can have over 250 ESL files without merging or any combining that you typically would have to do with ESMs or ESPs. So one of those things that honestly you probably won't even really notice, but hopefully more mods can take advantage of the superior file type, and that'll get passed on to you over the coming months. But either way, yeah, that is a look at all of the new content on its way to Creation Club. With this one in particular, I'd really love to hear from all of you. What do you think about this? Are you excited for this? Are you not excited for this? For those of you that have been really against Creation Club or specifically just never purchased anything from it, if some of that early stuff, the first 3 creations I mentioned in this video, is the right price, would you consider buying something from Creation Club? Mind you, it's not like a direct transaction. You actually do have to buy credits in bundles, then you could use those credits on an individual item. So I could see that actually being the final barrier to entry for some people. If the item's $5, you would have to spend $8 as that's the smallest bundle. But either way, yeah, that is pretty much going to wrap it up for this one. As always, again, I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and with that, I hope to see you all next time. Later.
We've lost our control of objective